I think it's a bodhisattva. It's a figure of the Buddha, and this is a repose position. It has gilt, but it's worn off. There's a missing arm. I thought it was so beautiful, I didn't mind the damage.
Time may have broken the bronze, but it could never diminish the beauty of the masterpiece within. This sculpture is a Chinese gilt bronze bodhisattva from the early 15th century, created during the early Ming Dynasty, 1368 to 1644. Its maker remains unknown, as is typical for sacred Buddhist images made for devotion rather than personal recognition. The elegance of its design defines its importance. The bodhisattva is seated in royal ease, a pose associated with early Buddhist art, with deep flowing drapery, a jeweled chest, and finely worked surviving hand details. The softly rounded face with its slightly lowered gaze conveys compassion and spiritual calm. Even with the missing arm and worn gilding, the sculpture retains a strong and dignified presence, age and loss being natural for objects of such antiquity. The quality of casting. Refined ornament and noble proportions suggest a work of exceptional status. Figures like this were often paired with a lotus base, sometimes inscribed and created for elite religious settings. More than a damaged antique, this bodhisattva stands as a rare survivor from a golden age of Chinese Buddhist art, where devotion and masterful craftsmanship came together in enduring form.
A very conservative retail price would be $100,000 to $125,000.
Really? Are you really serious? Oh my goodness. I can't believe it.
It's a wonderful object.
Well, my goodness. I can't believe it.
My dad got it in India. He was in World War II in India, on the India-Chinese border, and he brought it back with him on the war, so it's always been at our house. Matter of fact, it's set there by the fireplace, and we had a dairy farm, and Dad would come in and hang his hat on it after work.
Some statues do not need to be whole to still feel powerful. This bronze figure is most likely Zhenwu, the Taoist protector associated with the North, a deity whose ancient emblem is not simply a tortoise, but an entwined tortoise and snake. That symbol was given human form in the 11th century under the Song, and Zhenwu remained especially important through the Ming Dynasty, 1368 to 1644, when he was closely linked to state and imperial patronage. Even without the missing base, the statue still carries the force of that identity. The martial robes, armored chest, and solemn bearing all belong to the visual language of Chinese guardian deities. Faint traces of gilding across the breastplate suggest that the surface once shone far more brilliantly, giving the figure a sacred radiance that age has now softened into quiet dignity. What makes the work so compelling is precisely this sense of loss. The absent lower element does not weaken the sculpture, it sharpens its meaning. We are left with a fragment that still preserves the authority of the whole, a classic image of protection, devotion, and bronze craftsmanship fused into one commanding form. More than an antique, it feels like a survivor still holding the silent strength of a guardian meant to face the northern quarter of the world.
You're looking at a piece that could bring as much as $70,000 to $100,000 at auction.
Oh man, my two brothers will be really tickled.
It's a classic example of Ming bronze sculpture. If it was complete, it would be somewhere in the vicinity of $200,000 to $300,000.
Well, maybe whoever's got the turtle will call me.
My grandparents picked it up. They traveled a lot in China.
And when were they in China?
Probably the early part of the century.
The sculpture was first believed to be a Ming object, but expert appraisal revealed something far greater. A Tang Dynasty marble lion dating roughly from 618 to 907 CE. A period widely regarded as one of the golden ages of Chinese art. Such works are now more often found in museums than in private homes. The sculpture's greatness lies in the mastery of its carving, though unsigned, that is entirely consistent with works of this type. The rippling muscle's powerful stance, exceptional marble, ancient chisel marks, and sandy patina all point to great age and authenticity. In Tang art, lions symbolized protection, Buddhist strength, and imperial authority, and examples from this era are admired for their lifelike energy and commanding presence. More than a statue, this piece stands as a rare meeting point between the splendor of Tang civilization and the enduring power of ancient artistry.
Now the value I gave you is an auction estimate value. An insurance figure on this would be somewhere between $150,000 and $250,000. Probably toward the high end. I would say around $250,000.
Wow.
For insurance purposes. I'm just really pleased.
So it's worth lugging it in here.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
My husband was flying out of the Pacific right at the start of the Korean War, and he flew into Tokyo, found it in an antique shop, and bought it on installment. Every time he went in, he carried 7 cartons of cigarettes to the man in the antique shop, and that went on until he was about to be transferred back to the States, and he paid off the balance in cash. I don't know how much it was.
It feels like the kind of treasure that could cross a war, survive a century of doubt, and still stand with its dignity intact. Brought home from Tokyo in 1950, this sculpture was later confirmed through thermoluminescence testing to be an authentic Tang ceramic horse dating from 618 to 907 CE. In Tang China, horses were powerful symbols of rank, wealth, and prestige. So ceramic examples like this were often made as tomb figures to accompany nobles into the afterlife. What makes this piece especially remarkable is its large size and its 3-color Sankai glaze, one of the most celebrated features of Tang ceramic art. The flowing amber green and cream tones would once have made the horse look vivid, noble, and full of life. These sculptures reflected the Tang court's admiration for fine horses and the dynasty's cosmopolitan culture. Its later authentication adds even more weight to the story. Thermoluminescence testing, which measures when the ceramic was last fired, helped confirm that this was truly an ancient work rather than a later copy. So this object is more than a beautiful survivor. It is a lasting image of status ritual and memory created to honor the dead and preserve the grandeur of Tang civilization.
We would have told you that the insurance value would be about $100,000. In 2007, the market's gone down a bit. It'd be about $80,000 insurance
Wow.
now, okay?
Wow, that's still very good.
It's great, isn't it?
How did this come into the family?
It took a lot of begging on my part, but after a number of years, my grandmother gave it to me. She acquired it somehow, somewhere in their travels when my grandfather was an ambassador.
At first glance, it is only a gilded bronze Buddha, but the longer you look, the more it feels like a quiet light preserved from another age. This radiant figure is a Chinese gilt bronze Amitabha Buddha from the late Ming Dynasty, most likely dating to around 1550 to 1570. In Buddhist tradition, Amitabha is the Buddha of infinite light, and the jewel in his hand symbolizes wisdom bestowed upon all beings. The emblem on his chest, often misunderstood today, is an ancient Buddhist sign of blessing and longevity linked in East Asia to the idea of 10,000. What makes the sculpture so remarkable is the union of sacred meaning and refined craftsmanship. The Buddha rises from a lotus base, the timeless image of purity emerging from mud, while the bronze itself shows very few casting flaws. Even more striking, its gilding remains unusually well preserved, giving the figure a brilliance many similar works have lost over time. The proportions are balanced, the surface is elegant, and the expression carries the calm authority of a true devotional image. Its intermediate size also makes it unusual, since bronzes of this scale were less likely to survive than either smaller or much larger examples. More than a beautiful antique, this is a surviving image of faith, light, and blessing, an artwork that still holds the spiritual grace and refinement of late Ming Buddhist art.
An auction estimate on this piece would be $40,000 to $60,000.
All right, that's no 3,000. It's good to hear.
And even a conservative estimate would be higher.
Wow, and it's a lot older than I thought too. It all starting to make sense, I guess. Wow, it's impressive.
It's been handed down through my husband's side of the family since the 1800s, when a relative went over to China for 3 months to do shopping for antiques with the purpose to come back and open an antique shop.
Across the centuries, this silent bronze figure still seems to hold the breath of heaven. This figure is a Chinese gilt bronze Taoist devotional image from the late Ming period, likely around the early 17th century, and it may represent the Jade Emperor, the celestial ruler in Taoist belief. In Chinese religious art, seated immortal figures like this were especially admired during the late Ming era, when devotional bronze casting reached a high point in both craftsmanship and spiritual importance. What makes the sculpture so striking is the balance between symbolism and technique. Cast in heavy bronze and once richly gilded, it still preserves traces of polychrome decoration in the recessed areas. The figure sits in a formal pose on a bracket base with flowing robes, finely incised celestial clouds, and crisp beaded edges that show careful finishing. These details reveal a work of strong quality made by an experienced artisan rather than as a simple decorative object. Its age is also written into its surface. The softened gilding, deep patina, and old casting features all support its authenticity. Even small firing flaws and an old plug repair are part of its original making process, not later signs of imitation. Although many reproductions of Chinese bronzes exist today, this figure retains the weight structure and wear of a genuine early work. More than an antique, it is a surviving image of devotion, authority, and harmony with the natural and celestial world.
In a retail setting, it would demand a value of $20,000. It's a great object.
Oh, thank you so much.
This is a Guanyin, the goddess of mercy, and she's sitting on some lotus leaves. This came into the family when my parents bought a house in Hawaii. The house was fully furnished with antiques and furniture and whatever.
Before us sits Guanyin, or Guanyin the Chinese Bodhisattva of compassion, a sacred figure long associated with mercy protection and spiritual comfort. Seated on lotus leaves, she embodies purity and transcendence, while her downcast eyes, narrow face, aquiline nose, and small pursed lips create a solemn, inward-looking expression. What makes this sculpture especially striking is the richness of its detail. The jeweled crown pearl-like ornaments and tiered necklace reflect the visual language of Chinese Buddhist sculpture, where bodhisattvas were often shown with both serenity and princely elegance. The sharp, cascading folds of the robes add movement, while the oversized lotus leaves and old iron repair suggest that the piece may have been made in a more provincial workshop. The sculpture also preserves traces of its ritual life. The darkened face appears to come from years of incense smoke, and faint remnants of red, green, and ochre reveal that it was once brightly painted, perhaps even highlighted with gold. Carved from Nanmu wood, prized for its durability and resistance to decay, the figure was made to endure. Stylistically, it recalls earlier traditions, especially the Liao dynasty, 907 to 1125, even if its exact date remains uncertain. More than a religious image, this Guanyin is a meeting point of faith craftsmanship and time.
It's displaying many of those characteristics. In terms of an insurance figure, I would feel pretty comfortable with about $20,000.
Okay.
I got this at a yard sale maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I bought it because I thought it looked really old. I think it's like a Chinese Buddha.
Was the yard sale in California or your neighborhood or elsewhere?
California, yeah.
And what did you pay?
$40.
Sometimes sacred history survives in the most unexpected forms. This figure, first mistaken for a simple Chinese Buddha, is actually a Chinese gilt bronze bodhisattva from the late Ming Dynasty around 1650. It takes the form of a female deity influenced by Tibetan and Nepalese Hindu-Buddhist tantric imagery, with multiple arms seated in a full lotus position and posed with ritual gestures of blessing. More than a decorative object, it was created as a religious image for worship and meditation, meant to be placed high and viewed from below. What makes it remarkable is the union of spiritual meaning and refined craftsmanship. Cast in a bronze alloy and originally gilded, it still preserves traces of polychrome on the figure and crown, hinting at how vivid it once appeared. The lotus-inspired drapery, carefully modeled feet, and calm, compassionate expression all reflect the hand of a skilled artisan. Although some hands and ritual attributes are missing, the sculpture still conveys the transcendence and mercy such images were meant to inspire. In historical context, late Ming Buddhist bronzes often blend Chinese aesthetics with Tibetan and Nepalese prototypes, making this piece not only an antique, but a rare surviving work of sacred art.
I think in an auction setting, a value of $15,000 to $20,000 would be conservative.
Okay. Wow. That's awesome.
And in a retail setting, I would imagine it to carry a value of $30,000.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much.
Well bought.
Yeah, apparently.
It surprises me that these are still available at yard sales.
I was living in Los Angeles in about 1991, and I came home one day and a box was on my front step. I took it inside, I opened it up, and I found this.
Some figures seem to guard more than a temple. They guard time itself. This Chinese bronze guardian figure is one of them, a powerful religious image most likely cast in the 17th century during the late Ming Dynasty, when guardian figures were made with rich armor, elaborate robes, and an unmistakable sacred authority. What makes this sculpture especially striking is the contrast within its own body. The lower half is sharply defined deep folds in the robe ribbon, like lattice ornament, and finely cast beast mask details all reveal the hand of a skilled workshop. Higher up, the casting softens. The crown loses some of its crispness, as if the mold had begun to tire before the work was fully finished. That shift only makes the figure more compelling because it allows us to see both mastery and material limitation in the same object. It was once even more radiant than it appears now. Late Ming Guardian bronzes were often enhanced with gilding lacquer and vivid surface decoration, and surviving examples show how brilliant these temple figures could be. Here, traces of gilding intact beads and a warm, unpolished coffee brown patina preserve that memory of splendor. So what remains is not simply an old bronze, but a celestial protector still holding its ground. Even with age visible on every surface, it keeps the weight, dignity, and silent force of something once made to stand between the sacred and the human.
A conservative auction estimate today would be between $15,000 and $20,000.
Okay.
10 years ago, these Guardian figures would carry an auction estimate of $2,000 to $3,000.
I see.
I acquired it from an estate auction in a little town in Jerome, Idaho. It was a couple's estate, and he had been raised in China. It was one of those auctions that you wish you could go back and do all over. They had such wonderful things.
What makes this statue truly remarkable lies not in its size or display, but in the way it holds the viewer through a quiet, restrained beauty. Between the subdued glow of bronze and the delicate lines of silver inlay, Guanyin appears both solemn and deeply approachable, as if compassion itself had been cast into form. The work carries not only a spiritual beauty, but also the mark of exceptionally refined craftsmanship. The inscription on its back reads Yutang Shisu, a name closely associated with silver-inlaid Buddhist bronzes linked to the late Ming tradition. Although scholars still debate whether Shisu was a monk who specialized in creating devotional sculptures, a workshop name, or even the name of a broader artistic school, the name has long remained associated with devotional images of exceptionally high quality. Guanyin is shown in the pose of royal ease, seated on a rocky base, holding a scroll with a kalasha vase beside her traditional attributes of the bodhisattva of compassion. Her face is especially striking. Calm, balanced, and inward-looking, giving the figure a spiritual depth that feels both intimate and timeless. What makes this sculpture so compelling is the way beauty and tradition come together in a single form. The silver inlay technique continued to be copied well into the 19th century, but the casting style, and especially the classical treatment of the face, suggest this example was likely made around the 18th century. It stands not only as a devotional figure, but as a luminous work of art shaped by faith elegance and centuries of Chinese Buddhist tradition.
It would be worth somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000.
My
At
goodness.
auction.
Oh my goodness.
If it went up for auction
15
today,
to 20.
right.
Wow.
What did you pay for it at this auction?
I paid $350.
You did extremely well.
Right. I think so too, and I'm sure happy.
They were obtained by my father when he was an army prefecture commander in Himeji, Japan during the occupation. He brought these back with him.
Some sacred objects do not need grandeur to leave a lasting impression. These two Chinese gilt bronze Buddhist figures carry within them the quiet radiance of private devotion and the refined beauty of early Chinese sculpture. The first figure is Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical Buddha, and its restrained, elegant form reflects the spirit of the Northern Wei period, 386 to 534. The elongated body-calm presence and simplicity of design belong to a moment when Buddhist art in China favored spiritual stillness over ornament. The small stand beneath it appears to be a later addition, likely from the 19th century. Estimated value $5,000 to $7,000. The second figure, dated to the Sui dynasty 581 to 618, is more refined and richly styled. It was identified as Maitreya. Yet the vase and willow branch are also early attributes associated with Avalokiteshvara or Guanyin, showing how fluid Buddhist imagery in China could still be at that time. Its graceful jewelry, elegant pose, and strong surviving gilding give it a more luxurious presence. Estimated value $10,000 to $12,000. Both figures were likely made by lost wax casting and finished with fire gilding using gold mixed with mercury to create a brilliant surface. Once placed on household altars beside incense and offerings, they were made not just to be admired, but to be revered. What remains today is not only bronze and gold, but the enduring glow of faith across centuries.
This image here would be probably $10,000 to $12,000.
Fascinating. So the gilding adds to it.
Oh, it does. Yeah. And usually they're found scoured without a trace of gilding.
So don't touch it.
No. Leave the corrosion, everything. Don't clean it up.
All right, that's
but
amazing.
They're wonderful images.
I love them. Thank you so much.
It's a statue that was in my family, and I just never was given permission to leave the house. My parents recently passed last year, 2022, and I have it now at my house. I'm the third generation to have it.
This bronze figure is not simply an old household object, but a sacred image from Ming Dynasty China, most likely cast in the late 16th to early 17th century, within the Ming period of 1368 to 1644. Experts identify it as a gilt bronze Buddhist guardian figure, originally made for a shrine or temple rather than for display in a home. Its most striking feature is the rich layering of symbolism. The figure is associated with the Buddhist deity Marichi, while also reflecting a Taoist counterpart called Dumu, showing how Buddhist and Taoist traditions could blend harmoniously in Ming China. The many heads suggest omniscience, and the multiple arms represent divine power. In its hands appear attributes from different spiritual traditions, including the Sintamani, or wish-granting jewel, and the Ruyi scepter, a distinctly Chinese ritual emblem. Though time has worn away some details, the sculpture still preserves traces of polychrome decoration, and especially its beautiful gilding, most visible on the faces. The hollow interior comes from the casting method and may once have held sacred contents such as prayer materials. More than a family keepsake, this is a rare surviving icon of Ming religious art, carrying both spiritual meaning and remarkable artistic craftsmanship.
Fits into a marketplace right now that's very strong. And I think at auction today, I put an auction estimate of $10,000 to $15,000.
Okay. Wow. All right. That's amazing. I had no idea. Okay. That's incredible. Thank you.
Well, you're very welcome.
Glad you could talk to Becky. Thank you so much.
You're very, very
Holy
welcome.
Smokes. Yeah.
It came from my parents' house. They had traveled to China previous to World War II, I believe. I was studying Buddhism in college around 1973 or so, and I asked my mother if I could have it, and she said, yes, take it. And it's been with me ever since.
A sacred object is meant to be protected and revered. Yet this Chinese Buddhist figure seems to have survived in a far harsher way, carrying not perfection, but the visible scars of time. And that is exactly what gives it such striking power. This appears to be a late Ming period Buddhist bronze, created for worship rather than decoration. The sculpture is built in 3 parts: the seated figure, an inner section, and a hollow base. That hollow structure helped reduce weight while still allowing the figure to rise above its pedestal with presence and dignity. The base is rich in symbolism. It suggests a walled garden and a large lotus rising from water, a familiar Buddhist image of purity, peace, and transcendence. Above it sits the figure in a calm, meditative pose, radiating stillness despite the damage covering its surface. On the chest is the ancient Yuan symbol often misunderstood today, But in Buddhist tradition, it is a long-standing sign of peace, blessing, and spiritual fullness. Its greatest emotional force lies in the surface itself. The green patina abrasions and thick accretions speak of age, rough handling, and perhaps the remains of an earlier finish. It may once have been covered in lacquer gilding or another decorative layer that made it even more radiant. This is not simply an old statue. It is a wounded image of serenity, a sacred form that still preserves its dignity after everything time has done to it.
I think you are right on target. I think it's $10,000 to $15,000 at auction.
Really?
I do.
In this condition?
In this condition, I do, because people are looking at it today as the potential to bring it back to what it was.
I'm not sure I'd do that. I like the...
And that is a wonderful statement, because what some people see in the surface is just what life does to all of us.
I think this is Guanyin, and that she's a bodhisattva.
Okay.
I don't know where she came from, except for that my mother had her.
Some sacred figures do not impress through grandeur, but through stillness. This marble image of Guanyin draws the eye in exactly that way. Surrounded by crashing waves, yet standing in perfect calm, she becomes more than a sculpture. She becomes a quiet vision of compassion holding firm against chaos. The figure represents Guanyin, the Bodhisattva of compassion, one of the most beloved beings in Chinese Buddhist art. Rather than turning away from human suffering, Guanyin is honored for remaining close to it, offering mercy, protection, and peace. That meaning is powerfully expressed here, while the waters surge around her. She stands serene and untouched, transforming the entire scene into an image of inner strength in the face of adversity. Carved from white marble, this figure likely dates to the late Ming Dynasty in the late 19th century. She wears flowing robes, prayer beads around her neck, raises one hand in a graceful mudra, and holds a ruyi scepter, a symbol of blessing and fulfilled wishes. Beside her stands a small attendant wrapped in a celestial scarf, adding movement and a mystical sense of life to the composition. What makes this piece especially memorable is its unusual design. Mid-sized stone figures of Guanyin are not commonly seen, and the dramatic waves give this work a striking emotional force. Areas of brown discoloration on the marble suggest years of devotional touching, reminding us that this was not simply admired, it was believed in.
I think a reasonable insurance figure for this would be in the $10,000 range.
That's amazing. She's lovely. I can't believe she's that lovely. Thank you.
I inherited these lamps from my parents. They were teachers living in New York City. In the summer of 1951, they drove from New York to Mexico, and they brought back some interesting objects, including these. Now, they weren't lamps when they acquired them. They were just these statues. I think it was in 1967. We moved to a new apartment.
What appears at first to be a pair of decorative lamps is actually something much older and more meaningful. These objects were not originally lamps, but Chinese bronze figures dating to the Ming Dynasty, which lasted from 1368 to 1644. Although they were later transformed into lamps, their original identity still remains visible. Traces of polychrome paint and gilding can still be seen on the surface, showing that the figures were once far more vivid and radiant. In the dim interiors of the pre-electric world, such bright finishes would have made them stand out with a glowing presence. Their bronze material also reflects durability, allowing them to survive through centuries of change. What makes them especially fascinating is that they come from two different symbolic traditions. One figure is associated with heirlooms, an auspicious image linked to harmony, happiness, and blessings for marriage and family life. The other is identified as Lu Dongbin, one of the 8 immortals of Taoism connected with wisdom protection and spiritual power. Because these two images would not usually have been displayed together in a traditional Chinese setting, their pairing today feels unusual and memorable. More than decorative objects, these figures are witnesses to cultural reinvention. They began as sacred or auspicious Chinese bronzes and were later adapted into elegant lamps, yet they still preserve the visual language of their original world gold pigment symbolism and belief.
And they would be offered separately. That this one would achieve a price of between $5,000 and $8,000.
Wow. Great.
And that the He Er Xian would be likely to sell for around $4,000 to $6,000.
Oh, wonderful. It's fantastic. I'm amazed by all this information. I had no idea that I thought they were Mexican gods or something like that.
My father purchased it in China 1931, 1932, when he was stationed there as a naval officer. I don't know how much he paid for it or anything, but it's been in my family since he brought it back from China.
Before us stands not merely a sculpture, but an image of compassion shaped into metal. Guanyin, the Chinese goddess of mercy, one of the most beloved figures in Buddhist art. In China, Guanyin came to embody mercy, protection, and comfort, often portrayed in flowing robes, sometimes standing or seated with a serene expression, and symbolic objects such as a scroll lotus or vase. What makes this figure especially striking is both its spiritual meaning and its craftsmanship. The statue is cast in bronze and decorated with silver wire inlay, a highly skilled technique in which silver is set into the metal rather than applied on the surface. The delicate lines along the robe, the beaded necklace, and the graceful posture all reveal the refinement of the maker's hand. The inscriptions on the front and back are also important. Works like this are often associated with the name Shisu, linked to a celebrated Chinese tradition of finely cast silver-inlaid bronze figures. Although scholars still debate whether Shisu was an individual artisan or a workshop name, such pieces are admired for their elegance, balance, and technical mastery. Seen as a whole, this object is more than a religious figure. It is at once a sacred image, a work of art, and a testament to Chinese metal craftsmanship, where devotion, symbolism, and beauty are fused into a single enduring form.
In the marketplace today, I think in an auction sale, it would make between $8,000 and $12,000.
My father would be so proud. He'd love this.
I bought this one 5 or 6 years ago. It's a garage sale. The first day I didn't find this one. I found a pair of the porcelain vase.
Okay.
I think it's expensive, so I didn't buy it first day. And the second day when I go back, I found this one.
At first glance, it looked like a broken bronze, yet it was the surviving trace of a forgotten masterpiece. This figure is a Sino-Tibetan gilt bronze seated bodhisattva dating to the 18th century during the Ming Dynasty. It was not created as an ordinary decorative object, but as a devotional image for temple worship. The artist is unknown, which is quite common for sacred bronze sculptures of this kind, where religious function mattered more than the identity of the maker. The bodhisattva can be recognized by its elaborate adornments, a necklace, earrings, jeweled bands on the upper arms, wrists and ankles, along with an elaborate high chignon secured by a jeweled crown. Strands of hair fall gently over the shoulders, giving the figure a soft and graceful elegance. The statue is seated on a double lotus base, a symbol of purity and enlightenment in Buddhist art. It is fully cast in the round, with crisp drapery, broad shoulders, and a narrow waist, creating a beauty that feels both solemn and refined. One especially important feature is that the original base plate remains intact, suggesting that sacred texts or consecrated materials may still be preserved inside. In the dim interior of a temple, the gilded surface would once have glowed with an almost magical radiance. For that reason, this statue is not merely an antique, but a rare surviving example of Qing period Sino-Tibetan Buddhist art, distinguished by both its spiritual significance and its exquisite craftsmanship.
You're very close.
Very close.
So at auction, I would say the value here would be $7,000 to $10,000 at auction.
Okay, okay. All right, that's good. Thank you.
It belonged to my mother, who died about 4 years ago. She lived in Tokyo for a long time, and she started a great collection of Asian art. She would have acquired it sometime in the late 1940s, early 1950s.
Some bronzes do not impress through size, but through presence. This image of Guanyin holds that quiet power. With her serene expression, gentle posture, and faint traces of gold, she feels less like a static object and more like a surviving fragment of devotion. The figure represents Guanyin, the Bodhisattva of compassion, one of the most beloved figures in Chinese Buddhism. She is associated with mercy, protection, and understanding, which is why such images were placed in temples and personal shrines. Chinese Buddhist bronzes like this were also highly valued in Japan, where they influenced generations of metalworkers. This sculpture is a Ming Dynasty bronze likely dating to around 1600 to 1650, though a late 16th century origin is also possible. The proportions, especially the relatively large head and calm modeling, are characteristic of late Ming style. Guanyin once held a lotus, and part of the stem still remains, symbolizing purity and transcendence. The surface reveals even more. What remains is not just gilding, but traces of a gilt lacquer layer applied over bronze. Over time, the lacquer has dried and flaked away, leaving small flashes of gold that hint at its original brilliance. Beneath remnants of a red clay core can still be seen evidence of traditional casting techniques. This is more than a sculpture. It is an object where faith, craftsmanship, and time are still visibly intertwined.
I think this would have perhaps a conservative auction value of $7,000 to $10,000.
Wow. Wow. My mother would be so excited if she was here. And I'm very certain that's not what she paid for it.
Quite a souvenir.
My grandmother had it. A friend of hers, I believe, had it in a shipping container on the docks of New Orleans, and she wanted it, so she bought it from the friend, as far as I know. And then it went to my mother, and now we have it here.
Some objects do more than survive time. They seem to absorb it. This Chinese polychrome stucco figure is one of them, a sacred image once made for temple worship and long associated with Guanyin, the symbol of mercy and compassion in Chinese Buddhist tradition. Though altered by centuries, the figure still retains the dignity of its original form. Made from thick clay mixed with straw shaped by hand, and once richly painted, it would originally have shone with vivid colors and touches of gold. Traces of that splendor still remain in the faded pigments, the incised decoration, and most vividly in the dragon running down the front. These details suggest that it was once part of a larger temple setting, seated in a formal and sacred posture among other devotional figures. Its greatest power, however, lies not in perfection, but in survival. The body seems older than the head and hands, and several restored areas show that the sculpture has endured damage repair and transformation over time. The main figure may date from the 13th to 15th century, while later additions were likely made much later. Because of this, Its original identity is no longer entirely certain, and it may not even still represent Guanyin in its present form. What remains is not just a religious sculpture, but a moving witness to faith loss and renewal.
In an auction sale, I believe this would realize somewhere between $5,000 and $8,000 at auction.
Thank you. This is more than I ever knew before, so I appreciate it.
I'm a junker, and I found this at an auction, and I bought it. Probably 98, 97.
You paid how much for it?
About $90.
Some sacred images seem to carry the memory of devotion within their very surface. This figure is a Chinese Taoist gilt bronze image of Shi Huangmu, the Queen Mother of the West, likely dating from the 16th to 17th century. Her identity is suggested by the Hu tablet. She holds an object once used in formal petitions to earthly rulers, but here transformed into a symbol of appeal to a higher celestial authority. In Taoist belief, Shi Huangmu is a powerful immortal linked to transcendence and the heavenly realm, so this sculpture would likely have stood in a temple or devotional setting. What makes the work especially compelling is the combination of symbolism and craftsmanship. It was cast in bronze and then finished by hand, and traces of its original gilding still remain, especially in areas less worn by centuries of touch. That fading is meaningful in itself, suggesting repeated contact by worshippers over time, while the untouched face still preserves more of its original brilliance. The figure's strong casting, dignified posture, and sacred attribute all point to an object made not simply for display, but for reverence and ritual. Seen today, it is more than an antique. It is a surviving Taoist devotional image whose worn gold-aged bronze and spiritual iconography still preserve the echo of prayer long after the world that created it has passed.
What do you think this would be worth today?
Maybe $500.
I think it's more likely $4,000 to $6,000 at auction.
Oh, really? Oh, ooh.
It was given to us as a wedding gift in 1982. We've never known a lot about it. It's been in our family and on our bookshelf. We've always called it the fertility dude.
Some figures do not dazzle with grandeur, but with character. This rare Yiqing ware sculpture is believed to depict Li Tieguai, or Iron Crutch Li, one of the 8 Taoist immortals in Chinese tradition. Though his crutch is missing the gaunt body, exposed ribs, spare clothing, and vivid expression, still identify him clearly. In Taoist imagery, Li Tieguai is a protector of the poor, a wandering immortal who embodies hardship, compassion, and spiritual strength. What makes the piece especially captivating is its material and execution. It was made in Yiqing in Jiangsu Province, a region famous for its distinctive brown stoneware, and especially for teapots. Sculptural figures in Yiqing ware are less common, which gives this example added charm and rarity. The finely shaped sandals, visible vertebrae, thin chest, and striking face show an artist who understood both anatomy and symbolism, turning clay into a figure that feels fragile, human, and unforgettable. Likely, once part of a larger set of the 8 immortals, this work is dated to about 1820, placing it in the early 19th century. More than a curious old statue, it is a vivid image of Taoist belief, where suffering, humility, and endurance are transformed into something quietly powerful.
An auction estimate that would be fair would be $1,500 to $2,000.
Oh, excellent. Excellent.
My dad's
grandmother traveled to China in the 1920s. She came back with these horses, and my grandparents had these cases built for them. When my grandparents passed away, my dad and my mom moved into the house, and they raised my brother and I in that same house. So they've just been displayed in that house in the living room forever.
They were never meant to be seen by the living. These horses feel less like decorative objects than echoes from another world. They are Ming Dynasty Fahua tomb figures created to accompany the dead into the afterlife where wealth status and comfort were believed to continue beyond the grave. What gives them their special presence is their vivid Fahua glaze, a ceramic technique that emerged in the Yuan dynasty and flourished in the early Ming period. Their sturdy, full-bodied form also reflects Ming taste when horse figures were often modeled with a stronger, more robust silhouette. Though made for burial, they were not made carelessly. These figures were likely produced in molds, allowing tomb wares to be created in large numbers while still preserving ritual meaning and visual appeal. In that sense, they are both personal and monumental humble objects of clay, yet charged with the dream of carrying earthly privilege into the next life. Their later journey adds another layer of meaning. After the fall of the Qing dynasty, China entered a turbulent era when tomb objects began to circulate more widely, often through uncontrolled excavation and growing foreign demand. So what stands before us is not simply a pair of ceramic horses, but a surviving fragment of belief, beauty, and loss still carrying the silence of the tomb from which it once emerged.
If they were to come to auction today, as the set, they would bring around $800 to $1,200.
No. You're kidding. Okay, cool. You want them? Just kidding. My dad won't let go of them.
Come get them.